there's a little bit of a delay between StreamYard and LinkedIn, but not too much, but a little bit, maybe 20 seconds.
You mean to take your parts too, Adam? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Okay. No, I'm totally flexible.
Oh, no. Yeah, just, okay. Let me see. We will be live in just a couple of seconds, I think.
Haley, it's Ennes, correct?
Yes, Ennes.
Right, we're live. Okay. Holland.
All right. I'm just refreshing on LinkedIn. Awesome. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Holland McHugh. Adam Gordon and I are thrilled to be back with our second AMA. As a recap, we are getting together monthly with recruiter enablement thought leaders and practitioners across the industry to talk shop on this emerging discipline. We're super excited to be joined by our second guest, Haley Ennes. Haley, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. As you said, my name is Haley Ennes. I am our lead program manager of recruitment enablement at SproutSocial. We're a social media management software company, and my role works to drive improvements to our global recruitment processes and our workflows, really just to enhance the team's ability to find, attract, and hire exceptional talent.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you have recruiter enablement in your title. I know Adam's been on this bounty of research this past year. I started talking about recruiter enablement a few years ago as well. And there's not a lot of people with, recruiter enablement actually in their title. So as a practitioner, I'm thrilled to see this emergence, but want to know a little bit how did you get into the space and how did you get that in your title directly?
Yeah, good question. Well, before joining Sprout, I was an agency recruiter. And then at Sprout, I was a recruiter for several years, specifically a sales recruiter. And at the start of the pandemic, we paused hiring entirely. And we used that time to take a look at a lot of our tools, systems, processes, that sort of thing. And we put together project groups that made a lot of improvements so that when we did pick up hiring again, we were able to do it faster and better than ever. So when we started hiring, I was happy to do it, but found that I was really missing that type of work. And so was the team. Actually, we found we really needed somebody who was solely focused on making these kinds of improvements and tracking data and making sure that we were on the right track. So once, I guess, everyone saw the kind of opportunities that existed for us to always be improving, we didn't want to let go of that. So we developed the enablement program, and 2.5 years later, we've really built it into its own function. And just working in tech, I think enablement is a more common term that's thrown around. We have a sales enablement team. And so it was something that just kind of naturally came to be. We felt the sales enablement role enabled our sales folks. So let's put together recruitment enablement. And here we are.
I love that. I also got my start in sales enablement. That's kind of where I took that head nod as well. And the organization that I was working for at the time really believed in this concept that if you were not in sales, but you were in the sales and/or marketing department, you were in sales support. And so, that really shifted when I jumped back into recruiting, how I thought about the space overall. So absolutely love that. I have my personal definition of recruiter enablement, out of its, simplest sense, it's how do you get recruiter to spend more time with qualified leads and less time with everyone else. Not to, to continue to beat the drum, I'm going to throw it to Adam to talk about his personal definition, but then would love Haley to dig into your definition now that you've spent some time in this space and have really crafted this function around you. So Adam, hit us again with your definition.
Yeah, I mean, like you both, I was inspired by sales enablement, and I really, in my time in iCIMS, I got to spend a bit of time with the sales enablement team there, and I looked at the technologies that they were using, and I just thought, I don't feel like we're doing a lot of this in talent acquisition, and we really should be. And actually, I was speaking to a former iCIMS colleague yesterday who has set up a new or has taken over a talent acquisition team in a large American company. And I said, I think the way you've set this up seems very like how a sophisticated sales and marketing operation would be set up. And I said, I hope that's not rude, but she said, absolutely not. My definition is really the same as yours, Holland. I think I've been inspired by you as I've come to look at this, and I think it's about 4 things that I use as categories, which are marketing, operations, learning, and tools. And one of the things that I really wanted to, I am interested in Hayley's definition, but also as part of that, hey, Holland, you and I talk about recruiter enablement, which is enabling recruiters. And I'm big on words, and Hayley's job title is recruitment enablement. So I'm guessing that you enable more than recruiters, but it's about something a bit broader than that, maybe, or like tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I like both of your definitions. I guess when I think of recruitment enablement, the goal should really be aimed at ensuring that your team is set up to hire top talent. And that's by providing them, I guess what you said, Adam, like with the right tools and training needed for them to be successful, while also giving your candidates a world-class experience. So I think recruiters are a lot of times that first touch point, but then there are other things like when we think of marketing, recruitment marketing, what does the website look like and who's partnering with you on that? What are your hiring managers or interview teams sharing on LinkedIn? What's your employer brand? And then even more so, and this is something that we've done in the past, but definitely needs to be updated a bit, but thinking about hiring manager enablement, that's something that we're going to be focusing on in the second half of the year. And that falls within recruitment enablement. So I guess maybe it's more of like talent enablement as we're thinking about this holistically with like the entire organization and everyone who touches parts of the candidate journey and of the recruitment process. So maybe that's the differentiator there between recruiter and recruitment.
Can I ask about the hiring manager enablement then? Like, I think this is a really vital topic, and on the recruiter enablement YouTube channel, I've had a lot of people talking about enabling hiring managers, and I wonder if I've heard some extreme visions for the future, which is that everything in recruitment is just about enabling hiring managers to do a great job, and actually no recruiters are really talking to candidates or anything like that. Do you see a vision? Do you see a future where hiring managers are doing more sort of self-service in this area, or what do you think?
That's a really good question. I think maybe in very specific use cases, maybe, thinking about our about Sprout specifically, our like sales development and business development teams, they do a lot of hiring, probably more hiring than most individual teams do. And so those hiring managers they're pros. They know what's going on. They're really invested in the process. And they're proud to be a part of the team. So while I certainly wouldn't want to let go of that relationship, maybe that could be a scenario where they are a little bit more of a self-service kind of thing. I don't know what that would look like. But then there's a lot of other teams that do, they hire maybe 1-2 people a year, maybe like our legal team or partnerships or whatever it is. And in that case, I think that they really do need I know they need our support. So I don't know if for teams like that, it would work so well.
Yeah.
What is, kind of, going off script a little bit here, but digging more into this aspect of hiring manager enablement, what are some of when you think about enabling hiring managers as part of this broader recruitment umbrella, what does that look like? What are some of the tools that maybe need to be more adapted for that audience? what are some of the concepts, especially when you think about this dichotomy between these groups that hire a ton versus, to your point, leaders who hire once or twice per year?
Yeah. Well, if you ask me in 6 months, my answer might be a little bit different. We'll be doing our deep dive here shortly. But I mean, based off things that we already know, I think some areas of opportunity are trying to make the process, maybe like if you're thinking of a training or something like that, more scalable. So what we've done in the past is we've put together like a very specific training that's focused on how to use our ATS and how to use some of our other tools like Talent Wall, for example. And I think while we had good intentions, maybe it's something more about like, what is your role in the process and what is the value that you bring to our interviews, and how should you be communicating the opportunity, our EVP, to our candidates, and who are the people that should be involved in the interview process. I think thinking a little bit more high level and a little bit more strategically about how we are all a part of this, and this is the role that you are going to play, and this is your expertise here. I think that's probably more of the role that we'll take, as well as what are things that you should be doing on an ongoing basis, whether you have a role open or not? How can you be building a pipeline? How can you be communicating what it's like to be on your team, maybe on your LinkedIn, or maybe it's writing blogs? I don't know. I think there's a lot of different things that we can do there, a lot of ways where we can get really creative so that when it is time to open a role, we're not like scrambling to collect all of this information and try to push things out so that people can understand what the role is and what the team is like and that sort of thing. So that's how I'm thinking about it right now.
I love it. I love it. Well, Haley, I want to take a little bit of a step back. So I think we kind of just jumped into like the tactics and maybe we skipped over strategy. And I think strategy is so important in terms of defining the roadmap and really having that North Star or filter by which you are, pacing your activities, especially in a rapidly growing business, maybe a small, team of one type shop. And so would love to pick your brain and walk us through when you were getting started with Recruitment Enablement. Where did you start? It's this huge umbrella. Where did you decide to put your focus? How did you think about prioritization? What does that look like for you and your team?
Yeah, it took us some time and we're definitely still working on that. But when I did step into this role, I started, and well, I still do, but reporting into our senior manager of recruitment operations. So she also oversees our team of coordinators who do a lot of the, behind the scenes work, scheduling, onboarding, that sort of thing. So we're two separate teams, but all a part of recruitment operations. So I guess as we were really trying to iron out what the enablement function was going to do, we decided to start by building a roadmap. So our first step was to invite kind of the key stakeholders or the members of our leadership team within recruitment to participate in, I guess you could call it like an initiatives ideation session. And we started by, and we still do this today, but we start by reviewing the team's vision and goals. So what do we want to do this year? And we'll typically do it we'll do it in like November to start planning for the next year. And then from there, dive into thinking about initiatives to achieve the team's vision, that vision that we set for ourselves. And then we move on to the next stage, which is sizing. So are these initiatives going to be small, medium, large, sometimes even extra large, and then prioritize based on an effort matrix. So we'll usually look at a handful of projects that are maybe low effort, high impact, a few that might be high effort, high impact, and go from there. So that way we can make sure that the things that we're focused on are benefiting the team, but are also directly related to our vision and impact the priorities of the business for the entire year. So, like a few things, for example, I think that we started working on right away. We're establishing our recruitment marketing strategy, which we're continuing to work on that. It's pretty challenging. And then we wanted to upskill our recruiters. And so Adam, that kind of ties into, I think, what you were saying with I might get this wrong, the marketing operations learning tech, right?
Tools. Yeah.
Tools. Thank you. And so we implemented a tool called Social Talent so that our team could be like constantly learning. You can also add to it on your own. So that's where we do a lot of our training. So that was a lot, but that's where we started. And we found that for us, that's been pretty effective. And so that's something that we continue to do on an annual basis.
I love it. I also love, I'm a big fan of an, impact effort matrix myself. And one thing that, we hear quite a bit and, through these AMAs or just in commentary around recruiter enablement altogether is how do we get started tomorrow? Love that you have the luxury of building a roadmap, sizing. But when you think about some of those low effort, high impact activities, like what's serviced in that quadrant that folks either watching now or on this replay can, take away tomorrow? What were some of those big, wins for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think it's important to talk to your team. What does your team want and where are they struggling? And then whatever that is, that's what you should focus on. So if it's like a certain stage of the recruitment process, or if it's, they find one of the tools that they're using to be really challenging, or maybe it's the way that they work with their hiring managers, if that's a big thing. I think start by focusing on that. If you can make their lives easier, that's what enablement is all about. So if you were going to start tomorrow, weren't able to create like a big roadmap, I would just talk to the team and say, what is preventing you right now from doing your job effectively? Mm-hmm. And I'd start there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had a kid getting picked up for ballet, so I had to shout by. He knows that I did know she's gone.
No, you're totally fine. I know it's late afternoon on your side of the world.
Well, it's the middle of the working day. Still is 4:15. It's the middle of the working day, but it feels like about 9 o'clock given the amount of things that I've actually done today. But okay, so we've got a few comments here that I just wanted to touch on. Most of them are actually back to what we talked about earlier around hiring manager enablement. Krista said it definitely needs some focus. It's really important. Angelo said that at Rockwell Automation, they implemented a hiring manager enablement about 4 years ago, and it's helped their company tremendously. That's part of recruitment/talent enablement. I've asked both Krista and Angelo if they've got any specific tips on that. Michael has said, who is also in an enablement team, it's all enablement people here. Michael has said he's in a tech company, and he said that for him, hiring manager enablement's focused on leveraging their network through channels that they may not be as comfortable with as talent acquisition teams. So I wonder if that's to do with, I've asked him, like LinkedIn, for example, mining LinkedIn networks to try and find candidates and that sort of thing. And Jeremy's made a great point here. He's just backed up the whole high impact, low effort. It was a quick audit of the brand's representation through social media and found that they had a second Glassdoor they were unaware of. That's very challenging, isn't it? You've got your own Glassdoor that you're optimizing, and you've got another one where people are actually saying the real things about you. Is that what it is? I don't know. But yeah, no, I definitely think attraction is an important element of this. Can we just talk about that for a second, though, in terms of talent attraction, recruitment, marketing? I don't necessarily think that, I think building the employer brand, probably choosing the talent channels, things like that. I don't think that's quite so much an enablement, but putting things into the hands of the recruiters, like letting them know where to put that advert right now, what buttons to press and where to put it, so with the media knowledge at their fingertips, maybe through programmatic or that type of thing. And also knowing exactly what message to use, what the boilerplate is for things like, intros and outros and the tone of voice and those sorts of things. What images are you allowed to use? How do I access them at my fingertips? I think that taking all the strategic stuff that employer branding does and putting it into a format where recruiters can just go, bang, I'm going to pick and mix from this, like a buffet. that's the sort of thing that I think is probably quite impactful. Any comments?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Something that we've been working on is creating candidate personas for various departments within the organization. So last year, at the end of last year, we launched personas for engineering. And right now we're about to launch some for product design as well. I'm not sure which we'll move on to next. But so in doing that, we've been able to really understand the key motivators for these types of individuals. We can see who they are, what they care about most. We can see where they go to learn about companies, why they apply to a role, why they might not apply to a role. And so we can use all of that information to create some pretty high level templates then for our recruiters to use. In LinkedIn messaging in LinkedIn messages, or even just when creating posts on their own LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm hiring for XYZ role. We have specific messaging that they can use for that. So we've been doing it through candidate personas, which is pretty time intensive. So I know there's definitely another way where that can be done to really resonate with the type of talent that you're looking for. I don't know if we've quite nailed it at a super high level, but we are doing it within each function throughout the organization. So, I mean, if other people in the chat have recommendations, I'd love to hear them. But that's the approach we're taking right now.
I think we don't hire. I believe that recruiters have to be great marketers.
Yes.
But we don't hire them because of their marketing prowess, right? We hire them because they're great at moving hiring managers through a process and moving candidates through a process, and more for their deal management kind of skills and the ability to achieve influence in meetings and using their voice. But I think that we've done so much to try and train recruiters to be great marketers, and to train them to be great sourcers, and to train them to be great data analysts, and to train them to be great, all sorts of different things. And I personally believe we've got to just accept they can't be brilliant at all of these things, and including marketing. So if we can spoon feed them as much as possible with what you've just said, here's the messaging for LinkedIn, here's the social media post, here's outreach messaging, or whatever it is, then I think that's probably the best way to go about doing it, because that's what we do in sales enablement. We don't expect in sales enablement that salespeople have got masses of different 360-degree skills. We expect them to be able to good project managers, be influential, and all that type of thing.
And to work with packaged assets, which it sounds like you're doing, Haley. You're developing packaged assets against, in the sales world, a buyer persona, in your world, a talent persona. Love that your team has gone the distance to create personas, that you're thinking about content and talent attraction in a more, intentional way. Talk to us a little bit about how you're measuring that success, how you're really gauging efficacy of resources or assets that you're putting together for engineering versus maybe another persona that you've developed, or even within kind of the spread of engineering. You have, high X senior engineers, and you have a more junior suite. Where are you really seeing, a difference in terms of their needs, and how are you thinking about enabling those recruiters, to service those needs as you're working through your program?
Yeah. Well, for some context, what really inspired us to start working on the personas with engineering specifically is we felt like we were, and I guess this goes back to hiring manager enablement as well, but we felt like our interviewers were repeating very similar messaging at every stage of the interview process. And so, or at most stages of the interview process. So while we have really great company culture, a candidate can only hear about that so many times, and they have a lot of other questions. But when our interviews themselves are so structured to really assess their skills, sometimes 10 minutes at the end of an interview just isn't enough time. And so we really wanted to build on that. How can we be encouraging our interviewers to sell the opportunity of Sprout in a way that resonates with these particular candidates, and build on that? So tell a story throughout their time with us. So when we get to the offer stage, they're not left with a million questions about the role and about the benefits package and about growth opportunities and our DEI initiatives, and then have to do all the selling on the back end. So that's what really inspired us to kick this off. And we knew that because we were falling short then after, like, at that offer stage, because we had to do so much of the selling then, whereas if a candidate might be interviewing with another company who throughout the interview process they're being reassured, right? Yes, okay, yes, they answer all these questions, this is what I want, I'll move on to the next round, get more information, yes, I know even more. So we knew that we wanted to improve our offer acceptance rate. That was the big goal that we were looking for. And then below that, we also wanted to pay attention to our pass-through rates at each stage of the process. So I'd usually recommend for like any project, you look back at maybe like the 3-month mark to see how you're pacing, what your metrics look like. But because this was a little bit bigger, we wanted to make sure we had enough data. And so we waited until 6 months. So this is actually something that we're going through right now, looking at some of those metrics. And like I said, the biggest one there is our offer acceptance rate, but then also seeing like, what is the story here? What's happening throughout the journey in those pass-through rates to help inform, are there other areas where maybe we missed the mark in these personas and we still need to make improvements? So hopefully we'll know more soon. We're going through the data right now, and I can definitely get back to you on that.
Holland, there's a bit of controversy around the concept of personas in recruitment, and you're obviously deep into the employer branding area, and I can't really recall what's the controversy about it. But what you've been involved in conversations, have you, where people said, no, I wouldn't be using personas because of whatever reason it is? Do you know about this?
Yeah, you had my interest peak. I was like, what is the controversy here? I think sometimes, and I don't, this is not to like dig on my recruitment marketing or employer brand like counterparts, but I think sometimes we have a tendency to over marketize, whatever the proper word is here, like recruitment. We get in our marketing centric speak, and we don't do the best job of how does this connect to the outcomes and the motions that you're trying to drive in recruitment. So I think there might be this idea or controversy, if you will, that, the persona is all just about, content that you're creating from an attraction lens, but really the persona should extend, and be the filter across that entire like high to hired life cycle. And so I think the controversy may be rooted in, well, how is this going to help me fill the job more quickly? Because at the end of the day, that's what my hiring manager cares about. That's what I'm being measured on. And if you're telling me it's to create better content, well, I don't give a hoot about that as a recruiter. I want to know how this is going to get me to the outcome that I'm being measured on and the value that I'm driving to the business. So I think that's where the controversy lies. I think recruitment marketers could do a better job of marketing their services to their key customer, which is not marketing, it's not comms, it's not candidates. In my opinion, it's recruiters and recruitment leadership. So I think that's my perspective on where maybe that controversy stems from. And then kind of on the flip of that, I've had a ton of success with personas when applied in that framework. Yes, it helps you set content strategy and like tone of engagement and outreach, but more importantly, it also helps you think through what are the different motions or levers that you need to apply through your recruitment process. If you're in an environment where you have low availability of talent, then you need to have a more hands-on, white glove, high touch experience to really cultivate and nurture that talent through the process. If you're in an environment where you have high availability of talent, that's where you can maybe implement more automation and self-service type experience. And so I think personas really help you hone in on those experience levers in addition to, content and what they're typically used for. But what's your perspective, Haley? Have you heard this controversy?
No, this is news to me. Some confusion that I've heard, like when I first introduced the topic to people, is sometimes they're under the impression that these personas are meant to be the people that we want to hire. And that's not the case, at least for us. We're not looking to exclude anyone. We're not saying we can only look for these 3 different categories of people. Instead, they're meant to help inform us of how we can better sell to the 3 most common types of candidates we see come through our pipeline. So to me, that's something that comes up a lot. So that's where my mind went to. But otherwise, I'm not too familiar with other controversies.
Yeah, I think I've heard people talking, certainly Vicky Saunders, who is an EVP specialist in the United Kingdom. She has certainly said to me, and I feel really bad because I listen to everything Vicky says, and I can't remember exactly why. She said she doesn't like the concept of personas, but there are Molly's put an interesting comment in here around, is it because you're essentially generalizing a group of people? And if you're doing personas to the absolute sort of default, this is how the like really strict way of doing it. That persona has a name. It is a real person. It is somebody. And the chances are, if it's a software engineer based in Chicago, it's called John Smith and he's white, or whatever it might be. So there could be some controversy around that. Adams added the possibility of them reinforcing existing biases in interviewing and hiring. But I believe they are a really great place to start. And one of the things that I think is very useful about personas is if you have an EVP, I really believe in a company like a SproutSocial, for example, a SaaS business where you've got very different types of people that you're looking to appeal to. There will be aspects of your EVP that you might want to accentuate for engineers versus slightly re-emphasize for a different type of, maybe like a sales audience, for example. It could be different aspects of the EVP. So you don't change the EVP, but you just maybe re-emphasize it. And I think personas really helps with that, as well as of course, where do they hang out online? So therefore, where are we going to actually be able to find them?
Yeah. That's exactly it. And back to the point of, we can't expect our recruiters to be fantastic at everything like marketing. And we can't expect our interviewers to do that either. In an ideal world, they have, all this time to prepare before an interview to get to know everything about their resume, look at their LinkedIn profile, anything they've published on the internet, and get to know this person. And we know that just isn't the case. And so we're not creating templates for people or saying you have to talk about XYZ, but they're more suggestions to help lead the conversation in a way that we know is going to resonate with this candidate based on everything we already know about them. So it's really just a nudge in the right direction, as opposed to strict guidelines about who we can hire and who we can't.
Yeah. I also think, when I think about, the learning aspect of Molt, Adam, I think that there's also the persona is your guardrails. It's your filter, these nuanced EVPs by persona. They're general guardrails. There's also an element which good recruiters, great recruiters, they already do this. They know this. This is how they're able to close effectively. But it's also paying attention to context cues. And so if you're in an environment where maybe you have more junior recruiters, or you're onboarding, new associates who are not as familiar with your collective, offering of your organization and the unique value propositions that may exist depending on the audience, really being trained and upskilled on how to listen to context clues in screening conversations, in interviews, and saying, we have a solution for that, or we have a benefit that speaks to what this person is telling us they want, and then putting the recruiter in the driver's seat to kind of piece and pull from value, variable value offerings is also really, really key.
Can we just do a quick pause on that thread and come back to it? There's something I want to respond to on that, because I think it's a really exciting thing to talk about. But let's just quickly go back, because Daniela asked a very specific question around offers not accepted. How will you determine why and what to do about that next time, Haley? What are you doing? How does that work?
Yeah, for offers not accepted, so we document that. We document why somebody has rejected an offer, and we have, maybe a list of 5 or so key factors. So maybe like accepted a different offer, or didn't like our compensation or total rewards, things like that. But then we also document some additional notes that are appropriate to include. That way we can better understand what's going on. And more often than not, there's going to be a very common theme there, at least within functions. And so that's what we were taking a deep dive into, to really understand where were we missing the mark, or where we maybe not selling ourselves in a way that makes it seem like we can't compete with XYZ company, which just isn't the case. We just weren't communicating that information effectively.
I imagine that, and you can't say this, and maybe you would not, maybe it's not true, but I imagine in a lot of cases, when a company is doing that analysis, they find that everybody wants to work for Jane and for John and for Bob, but nobody wants to work for Jason. And Jason's the problem. I bet that happens. Back to the point about personas, a couple of other things that I was just thinking about that I wonder if you've done anything with, because I think that other things it links to include when somebody's coming through the process, and we think about optimizing for stages and bringing people through that funnel, or whatever you want to call it. I imagine that the objections at the first outreach stage could be quite different to maybe like at the offer stage. And if recruiters know what the objection handling options might be, so when you send your like sourcing messages out to engineers and they're like, SproutSocial, like I want to work for a company that's changing the world, I don't want to work for a company that's optimizing social media posts, or whatever it might be, if they're equipped with, here's the objection handling options on there. And then just one other is around like the concept of battle cards, and really understanding we like to hire people that work for that company or that company, but nobody from that company wants to join us because of whatever reason it is. So you can get maybe really granular with the objection handling and the approach message and all that sort of thing. Is that something that's like you've thought about, or is it something you've done anything about, or is that like more granular and I'm just too deep into the weeds?
Yeah, well, to your first point there, in part of the persona work, we were looking into like what are their key motivators for pursuing a new opportunity. And for some of the personas, like there might be somebody who falls into the activist persona. And so we know that they care a lot about specific DEI initiatives, or maybe sustainability, that sort of thing. And so in some of that initial outreach, we can include the things that we're doing that touch on those things that they care most about, so that it's not an immediate, what you said is, I don't want to work for a social media company. I want to work for a company that's changing the world. Well, here's how we're doing it. Exactly. So, yeah, absolutely. That was a part of it. And then your second question there, can you remind me what your second question was?
Well, it was to do with like, if they work at specific companies that you want to hire for, or something like that, like, can we create particular messaging at for different stages for people that work at those different organizations?
Yeah, that's a big opportunity. And candidly, we don't have battle cards. A lot of that happens within like our specific pods within the team. So with their knowledge sharing, their weekly meetings, that sort of thing, like, hey, we've been talking to there's a lot of communication that happens within like our pod Slack channels, where they can talk about struggling with prospects from this company, what kind of comments have other people used. But I definitely think, I know having something like battle cards would be very beneficial, and we just haven't gotten to that stage yet.
I love, though, even like absent of battle cards, and I think that might be in like a smaller organization just getting started, a luxury tool. But talk to us a little bit, like you've piqued my interest. I love that, you've created an environment of feedback loops. So talk to us to the degree that you can about like your Slack communities, how they're set up, and like what is that either percent time allocated to foster this communication? Is it organic? Is it intentional? Talk to us a little bit about how you're generating those feedback loops.
Yeah. We have a couple different tools that we use for feedback just generally across Sprout. And I think the recruitment team has adopted to those pretty well. So if we're thinking about like Slack specifically, we try to keep our recruitment channels very very casual, very open. We can certainly send updates there, but it's free for anyone to ask any question and for everyone to participate, which I know isn't always the case. So for example, our VP every week will send out a poll, or we'll do like a color sharing thing where you ask, how's everyone doing this week? How's everyone feeling? Are you ready to take on new work? Do you need to pause? That sort of thing, just so you have a gauge of how people are feeling and how interactive they're going to be. And so I think that really just like sets the tone for people to feel really comfortable and confident in being able to ask questions they might feel like maybe a dumb question, no dumb questions, but people feel that way, or to propose new ideas. I think it just creates a very safe environment where then feedback comes naturally. So a few other ways where we like to collect feedback is throughout, let's say we're like launching a project, we might take a smaller group of recruiters to share this project with and say, hey, here's a form, anonymous form to submit your feedback. Let us know what you think. And you can ask pretty pointed questions like, do you feel that this would benefit you for this reason? Or is this going to make your job easier? Or is this going to take more time away from you and talking to candidates? So doing something like that. But then we always check in with the team after we've launched a project just to gauge how they're feeling. And like I said earlier, I think that 3-month mark we found to be like the sweet spot where people they've taken some time to become familiar with the process and to work it into their everyday workflow or whatever it is, and really identify where the gaps are, because more often than not, you're not going to nail it entirely. So those are a few ways where we've put together like more formal approaches to feedback.
How deep into like, I'm just going to call it a funnel, do you go? So like recruitment, where does recruitment stop? Does it stop a month after the person's joined the company, 3 months after the person's joined the company? Does it stop when they sign their contract or the day they start? Like, do you go in any way into onboarding? Because I wonder if that is part of recruitment enablement, for example. Where does it start and stop?
Yeah. So I would like to say it's within the first 3 weeks that they're at Sprout. So we have a pretty structured onboarding program put in place. So they meet daily they're meeting with people throughout the organization, but I also run an onboarding session, and it's our referral. It's all about our referral program, like Referral 101. And I believe that takes place in their 3rd week of onboarding. And so it's in their 1st week. We recently updated, but anyway. And so during that time, we kind of walk them through like, what does recruitment at Sprout do? And we talk about some of our DEI initiatives and how we tie that into hiring. And then we just get into like the meat and potatoes of the referral program and why referrals are so important to us. They are our number one source of external hire. And we have some exciting like incentives that we give to employees who refer. So we get into all the details there, and I think that's our last touch point with them. So I suppose you could say that's where it ends.
So that's a one-off referral initiative at the point that they're recently in the business and they're probably feeling excited about what they're doing, and that's the like most magical moment for them to go, yeah, I'm going to go and tell everybody I know? Or is that why you've done it like that, or how does that?
Yeah, that's a big reason. But we also have a lot of like parameters in place for what qualifies as a referral and what doesn't. Something we were running into before we really put together this program was our recruiters do such a wonderful job of prospecting and getting people into our funnel. And then we were finding, and we have prospecting goals for each recruiter every month. And then, maybe 2 weeks into the process, let's say a prospect has been converted into a candidate. Now they're meeting with a hiring manager. Well, John over here hears that, oh, I know that person, they're already in the process. And then they try to get referral credit for that. And that's just not fair to our recruiters. That's their prospect, So that's another big reason why we put it in place. We just want our employees to understand what a referral is, what the program looks like, how to properly submit, and how to qualify, so that we can make sure that we have clean data. But another way that we encourage referrals is, again, in Slack, we have an announced careers Slack channel where everyone in the company is a part of that channel. And anytime a recruiter opens up a position, they'll post the position in that channel with 3 qualifications, let's say. If there's anything related to internal mobility, like if you want to apply, talk to your manager, here's the link. Also, we're asking for referrals, put the link there. So we definitely have other touch points, ongoing touch points, I guess you could say.
Adam, I kind of building on what Haley's sharing, I think, positioning programs like referrals, intermobility, I think definitely in those first few weeks of onboarding is critical. I've always come from a camp where once you're in a certain stage of onboarding, typically in that first 30 days, there's that warm baton pass over to talent management, learning and development, really whoever owns that onboarding and kind of performance management cycle moving forward. But in terms of enabling recruiters to think about the internal pipeline of talent, yes, I think there definitely needs to be time carved out and assets developed, learning developed, training, etc. And some of the things to me that looks like is one, internal campaigning. How are you, constantly marketing opportunities to internal talent? It's a lot more cost effective and quicker to move someone, from an existing line of business into a given role. To also some trainings, again, really, strong recruiters are going to know how to do this, but this is not necessarily a skill that gets flexed every single day. But developing those relationships with HR business partners or that equivalent, and really understanding succession lines, like how are you thinking through existing talent that's been identified in your organization and moving them throughout the business. I think that's definitely an art that needs to be constantly and reinforced throughout their recruitment experience. And so when I think about enabling recruiters, enabling them to think about the internal talent market, partnering with those individuals who know the talent in and out, like an HR business partner, is really key to building and sustaining pipelines on the recruitment side of the house. So yes, I do think enablement extends, after.
Yeah, absolutely.
After that hire. Mm-hmm.
No, I think it absolutely does as well. And I believe that just generally in recruiting, I think we're moving closer towards, and it's going to take years before it happens, but we're moving closer towards a day when we think about our talent pipeline as everybody who works for the company, who might work for the company, who used to work for the company, and think about them all as an audience. And we're putting quite equal. I believe that companies are going to get smaller in terms of permanent headcount, and I think that there's going to be a lot more reliance on tasks getting done by people that are working freelance and things like that. And I think that the internal, certainly, I've got a friend who has actually his long-term contract. He works for a bank in a specialist role within tech, within talent acquisition, and his role's just been stopped. But there are, and he's due to be finishing on Tuesday, but there are actually 4 other things inside the organization which he is going to go for, and it's more likely he's going to stay there than it's to go anywhere else. But I think that the day of, what I mean by this is the days of enabling people to be able to understand what the options are for them, we have to all get better at that.
Yeah, I agree.
Haley, what are the skills you've had to call on, which from your days of recruiting have been most important in being able to do the job you do now in enablement?
That's a really good question. The transferable skills, I suppose, like active listening is a big one. And you find this a lot with when you're talking to candidates and trying to get a better understanding of what it is that what are you looking for, and what are you trying to get away from? A question that I always like to ask when I was interviewing candidates was like, actually, I don't remember exactly what it was, but something along the lines of like, in an ideal world, if you could paint like your perfect role, what would it look like? What would you be doing? And I think you learn a lot from that. Some of the things that bring them energy. A lot of times people tell you, well, that's a good question. I don't know, but here's what I don't want to do, is how they answer the question a lot of the time. It tells you a lot. But anyway, so I think asking questions like that has been really helpful. In this enablement role, you can often ask people for feedback or what do you wish was better. And I think they don't always know what the answer is. So you really have to read between the lines, ask very specific, pointed questions, and let them kind of like mind map in front of you and then try to put those pieces together. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've taken from my days as a recruiter.
You got to ask why, and then when they give you the answer, it might need another why and another why and another why. Why is that important? Why is that important? Yeah, no, absolutely. If you're a good interviewer, then you're or a good hiring manager, consultant, then you're probably going to be pretty good at getting to the bottom of what's the real issue here. And I bet there's times when you think when the recruiters tell you, right, here's a problem, and when you get deep into it, you find that actually the problem's caused by something else. Or, does that happen?
All the time. I'd say that's always it. People will often come to you with, hey, we need let's say like, hey, we need more marketing material. Like, but do we? Like, what are you using currently? And then they realize that they actually forgot about this list of 30 things that we have available to them. Or it's not that we need more material, it's that you're not communicating the value of it effectively. And so, yeah, that's a really big thing, is asking why. And instead of leaning on what people tell you they want, get to the root cause of what is the problem that they're actually experiencing.
I love that. So we have a few more minutes. So if anyone has any questions for Haley or the team here before we break, please drop them into the comments now. Haley, in our last few minutes, would love to talk about measuring efficacy of your program. I know that you've built this robust roadmap. You've started rolling out elements of your recruiter enablement strategy. How are you thinking about measuring the outcome of your efforts, and then what are you measuring today, and what are some of the things that you want to measure as you continue to roll out more elements of that roadmap?
Yeah. Well, we measure our success based on the success of the recruiters. Are they meeting their KPIs? Are they meeting their goals? And are we meeting our hiring plan? If we fall short on any of those areas, if the team falls short on any of those areas, then that means that we've failed our team. So we don't necessarily have our own performance metrics within enablement, but instead we just need to make sure that our recruiters are meeting their goals, because that's the whole goal of recruitment enablement, is to make sure that the team is effective and successful in hiring the best talent for Sprout. So and to me, that's what makes the most sense. So that's what I would recommend if anyone's looking to put into place any sort of performance metrics, because I think that's the biggest sign as to whether or not you're doing your job effectively.
I love that.
I think when I first started really studying this quite intensively, which was probably about February last year, February, March last year, I think there was about 100 people in in-house talent acquisition teams who had dedicated enablement jobs, and I think that's more like 300 now. From my research, I think there's 3 times more people doing this job, and that's not because it's not like a issue of the moment. We should look at this. This is because this is the trend. It's not a fad. And that's because the results are becoming quite clear. The investment in enablement programs from that is really, really clear. And I would highly encourage any recruiters work out, how do you get an opportunity to move into a role like this or create a role like this in your organization? Because I think that if you're ambitious and you want to be like VP of talent acquisition or something like that in the future, then the opportunity to be involved in like programs which are going to have impact across a much bigger group than just yourself and what you're doing. You'll be involved in decisions around budgets and strategy and things which you're gonna have to get some experience in if you want to really progress into a senior level position. So that's somebody who, I don't work in this area, of course, but from the outside, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, being involved in these things is not something that recruiters typically get the opportunity to do. And I think it's a really, really good stepping stone towards future senior leadership positions.
Awesome. Annie, I'm just scanning through the comments.
We've got quite a lot more around hiring manager enablement. That's actually too much for me to read, but I will come back to it and get involved in that in the discussion.
Angela, we'll have to have you on, and we'd love to like focus like a deep dive on hiring manager enablement. It could be a fun one.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I do have another question actually I wanted to ask about, and that is candidate enablement. There is a. Do you use the phrase department store? Is that in America? Is that a phrase you use in America?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right. There's a quite upmarket UK department store called John Lewis, and their head of recruitment, who is somebody I know, was on the news in the last couple of days in the United Kingdom because they have moved towards they are briefing all candidates with exactly what questions they're going to be getting in interviews, and they've gone out and explained why they're doing this, and it's got picked up, and she's been on BBC News and all sorts. Lorna Bullitt, well done. I wonder, like, enabling candidates with, I don't know, packs of information and things like that, something that you've done much of?
Yeah.
Or is it on roadmap or yeah?
Yeah, we've certainly done that. Some like prep guides that we would call it. Yeah, I think it's really important to let people know what it is that you're looking to gain out of this interview instead of letting them go blind. There's no point in just like testing someone how well you do on the fly. I guess maybe that could be for some specific roles. But anyway, I think giving them a general understanding, we don't necessarily feed them the exact questions that we'll be asking, but giving them idea of, hey, these are the skills that we're looking to assess. These are the specific people that you'll be meeting with and exactly what their job functions are. And here's maybe 3 things that you should prepare for. I think giving them that kind of information will set anyone up to be a bit more successful and to sell themselves in a better way, be more confident in the interview. And sometimes people are just really nervous. And if you can take some of those nerves away, they can perform much better, and you'll get a much, much more accurate understanding of how qualified they might be for a role.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if people understand who they're going to be meeting, what type of things they are going to be asked about, if not the full questions, what the environment looks like, what they should be wearing, or not exactly what they should be wearing, but like, and maybe some guidance on what the norm is within the organization, those types of things. It definitely gives people a sense of when they turn up, especially if it's in person, they turn up and they feel like, yeah, this is familiar because I kind of knew what I was getting into. I think that helps to build rapport during that process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of recruiters who will do a prep call, and we're trying to make this a little bit more of the norm, but like before a final interview, just do a prep call. That way they can ask any questions that maybe they forgot in the last round. And our recruiters want these candidates to be successful. We want to hire these people. They wouldn't have made it to this stage of the process if we weren't super confident in their abilities. And so having a prep call, I think, goes really far. And it also, we just want people to do well. And so it also gives these candidates a better perception of your company.
Haley, we're on the hour. Thank you so much.
Yes,
it's been really great to hear from you and to learn from you. There's been lots of comment and chat in the discussion on LinkedIn here. And yeah, my big thanks from Holland and I for you joining. Holland, final comments or questions or points?
Yeah, no, I just appreciate you, like Adam said, Haley, for joining. If folks want to connect with you after the session, where should we point them?
My LinkedIn page, Haley Ennes. I'm there. Happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. I love it. Well, folks, Adam and I promise we're going to get on a more routine schedule here. Our next session is coming up on May 15th. So next week with Amy Cropper, and then we'll be back the first Wednesday of each month. If you have, any burning questions around recruiter enablement, please be sure to tune in, drop a line to our guests. If you want to be a guest, drop us a line and we'll make sure to get you on the show. All right. Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
All right.